is how did you get into golf?
Yeah. So I got into golf. Man, I started kind of just dabbling into it as a kid, just here and there. Grew up kind of just going to a par 3 course, just kind of for fun. Nothing serious, called Knights Play over in Apex.
Okay.
And really nice, pretty nice course, 27 holes. They got night golf where they got lights where you can go play at night. And so great place to just kind of really work on your short game in a way. But really, I got introduced to really playing more golf when I met my, at the time, not father-in-law, but my father-in-law, Eric, he kind of, I guess, kind of drove that little, that bug into me a little bit more. Like, it was just kind of like I'm not good at this. Let me see how I can get better.
Right.
And, you just get a few shots that are really, really good. And you're like, I got to do that again.
Yep.
But I don't know how to do that again.
Right.
I want to crush this thing as far as I can.
Yeah.
Look, I just made that really long putt and I just duffed that chip. So it's just kind of an ever learning process of, you're not going to master the game of golf.
Right.
And it's just that kind of a game, that kind of a sport where it's all about probabilities. And it's a lot to do with the mental side.
Right.
Aside from the physical, which we'll talk about, but the physical and the mental side of it can kind of carry over into a lot of things in life. And so I got interested into it from him more so. And I then pursued kind of more education from the physical therapist side of me, right? Through Titleist Performance Institute, also known as TPI in the industry. Dr. Greg Rose and Dave Phillips, they are the co-founders of TPI. And so I took a few of their courses, got certified through them in different courses, medical, power, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And a lot of great education, and further continue to pursue kind of that education in golf biomechanics with a guy named Dr. Kwan out of Texas Women's University. And if you want to go into the weeds of golf biomechanics, he's your guy. It's a lot. And frankly, the combination of those two things has really, really helped me be able to create just drastic changes in people's golf swings, making them a much more dynamic, powerful golfer with less injury. They can go play 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
And, they're in their 70s and now they're hitting the ball further than they ever have hit it. And so it's, that's kind of what drove me to get interested into it. And I just started kind of picking up the passion of trying to play, try to get better. And frankly, now I don't have as much time to do that because I got a baby along the way. And yes, that's going to be an amazing time. I am looking forward to it for sure. But golf is, oh boy, what do we have here?
I mean, you could take the baby with you.
That is true.
You just like,
it will be cooler. October, it will be cooler.
Right.
If my wife will allow it.
Is to get a golf cart.
Get a golf cart with a stroller.
Right.
They make them.
I'm sure they do.
For real, they make them. Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But, one day soon. But it's I started taking some lessons from a guy named Kirk Baker, really great guy up at Castle Bay.
Okay.
He does a phenomenal job with people, and he was actually one of my first clients as well. And Kirk's one of the guys that he is so open to learning that, like, what I had to say, he would listen, and I would listen to him. And, I would continue to kind of further like my understanding of the golf swing and the biomechanics. And I would talk to him about it and kind of give him some ideas. And like that helped him with some of his clients, and like it's helped him personally. But it's just really cool. He's really open to learning and really open to feedback. And that's something that's really, really valuable in a coach and a swing coach that you could find. But started taking lessons myself. I am not the best of golfers yet. Handicap of like a 15.
Yeah, not too bad though.
So yeah, not bad for not playing as much as I would like to. But nonetheless, I can still drive the ball 330 yards.
Oh, wow.
So, Drew, I'm coming for you. When
Yeah.
you listen to this, I'm coming for you. Not
Getting
really.
there.
I am not his. I'm not to his caliber. No way. But
Yet.
he's a big guy.
What's
Drew
the
Cody.
furthest he was able to drive the ball during his last competition?
Oh, his last one that he was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And that heat and humidity. Gosh, I think he might have got one that was 390.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I
And-
saw it was like 380 something is what I saw, but I knew he hit
Yeah,
it
like
further
389 or
since
something
then.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But
But-
that humidity.
Oh my goodness.
Right. I couldn't imagine.
It just
Oof.
knocks that ball down.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance to. I mean, Kyle Berkshire. If anyone's familiar with World Long Drive, Kyle Berkshire has kind of been the dominant face of it in the past couple of years, among some other guys.
Mhm.
Eddie Fernandez for the senior guys, who he's swinging 151, 152 club speed, ball speed of 220. It's like, dang.
Oh,
Wow.
But Kyle, like he was getting ball speeds in the 230s, but it wasn't going much further than the competition.
oh.
Oh, interesting.
He was also having a hard time finding the grid in that competition too later on. But it's just fascinating to see what kind of conditions that you play in,
right.
how it affects where that ball goes.
Mhm.
You know, you could swing it as fast as possible. He was getting 160 miles an hour on his club speed,
Wow.
but it was still not going very much further. And that has a lot to do with the conditions that you're playing in, the environment, the altitude, which was not very high in Memphis, but the humidity. That with the heat
Right.
and the humidity.
Yeah, that water in the air, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
just, like
Yeah.
stops it.
Oh yeah, it causes it to drop.
Right.
That's for sure.
That's like me trying to play. I was playing switch golf with my family last night. And first off, I'm a goofball and try to do it left-handed.
That's a good way
Yeah.
if you're not left-handed.
I'm definitely not left-handed. But every time I would hit the ball, it would just do that whole up and drop. And I'm like, ooh. But that's what my head thinks of is like when you hit a ball, you think you're hitting it really hard, and then the atmosphere just says, nope. Good try, though.
So in your side of it, is it like a completely different game plan? Like when you work with someone like Drew, as opposed to like a regular golfer, because I'm sure there's so much more torque going into just trying to drive that ball as far as possible, right?
There is a lot. There's a lot that goes into it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is for sure. But a lot still stays the same across the board.
Okay.
No matter if you're 75 years old, or if you're 15 or you're 10 years old, or if you're a freak
Mhm.
like Drew
Yeah.
and what you're able to do, you still have to have the bare minimum mobility requirements that the golf swing needs.
True. Yeah.
And so for that, we have 4 rotational centers of the golf swing that I'll measure with all of the golfers. We got a golf assessment on our website in case anybody who's listening to this wants to kind of figure out like where they stand with their mobility. It's changethegamept.com /home assessment or something like that. But it's free. It'll give you insight into what you need and kind of help start a plan for you going forward. But all golfers need to have rotational mobility in their
Right.
neck, their shoulders, their spine, and their hips.
Yeah.
And when I say spine, I'm talking about the thoracic spine, the spine between your neck and your lower back. And so if you have enough mobility in these 4 rotational centers, then you're golden when it comes to being able to kind of increase that length in your swing, right? And also preventing injury from happening, right?
Okay.
You need to have that adequate mobility. And then you need to have the strength necessary for producing the torque in your swing. Once you have those things, then you're talking about like for someone like Drew doing a lot of power and speed related things, overspeed kind of things, but also a lot of technical things,
Right.
Swing coach things. There's some things that I still want to work with him on.
Yeah.
He's just in the middle of competition, and
Yeah, that's not
it's
time to make
it's
changes.
not very it's not very good time to create a lot of changes. It's like taking a golf lesson right before a tournament that you want to play. in.
Right. Yeah.
It's probably not you're going to be in your head.
Yeah.
But you know, the swing itself, you need to have that rotational mobility, and then you need to also be able to have So the strength, the power, and then, well, what factors influence that club speed? For someone like Drew, that's what he's after. He's after increasing that gap of how fast he can swing, right?
Okay.
And so that's kind of the difference with Drew versus these other individuals who are likely swinging under 120 miles an hour.
Oh,
He's
wow.
at the 150. And so I like to kind of compare
Crazy
it.
to think of.
It's fast. I mean, the
Yeah.
fastest I've gotten with my swing is, and that's not hitting a ball,
Right.
is 140.
Oh, wow.
Hitting a ball is 133, 134, but I don't know where that's going.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So 150 is just, it is so impressive. And that's why it is very few people can do that.
Mhm.
And there's some people that are now hitting, the mid 160s, the high 160s. And it's insane. The amount of torque that goes on the body. I'll give you guys a kind of a comparison on like when it comes to spine health here.
Mhm.
So you guys familiar with like a tackle dummy or the football sleds?
Yeah.
Like that you'd kind of push, right?
Yeah.
So for the average professional golfer, for the average swing that they have, they're producing 7,500 newtons of compression force on their spine. What does that mean?
Mhm.
8 times body weight
Oh, wow.
of compression force
Yeah.
on their spine. That's the equivalent of ramming yourself up into the blocking sled.
Yeah.
But doing that, and this is also like, why do golfers have back pain?
Yes.
Well, if you're not moving well rotationally, a lot of that stress is going to go to the back,
Mm-hmm.
all that compression force. And that's actually from your muscles. A lot of that compression force is from the muscles themselves.
Okay.
And so 8 times body weight for the average professional golfer. These guys are swinging much faster than those guys.
Right.
And so that's every swing though. Right? So that's
Yeah.
a lot of force and you got to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'll always advocate for people to keep it as simple as we can. You need to be able to rotate well through your hips, your shoulders, your spine, and your neck.
Mhm.
And if you fail in any of those, we're looking at a recipe of getting hurt, but also having inconsistency with your swing.
Mhm.
And so once all those are cleared up, then we're talking about building a strength base, and we can talk about that. And CrossFitters here, you guys do CrossFit?
Yeah,
you do
there's
CrossFit?
like-
Yeah.
We try.
So yeah, you guys train. Yeah. And so we can talk about training principles and kind of like, well, how does that relate to a golfer?
Mhm.
But the big thing for someone like Drew is staying healthy.
Mhm.
Like right now, a lot of power priming stuff is what we would do, what we would focus on, a lot of speed work, but also a lot of tissue work, tissue recovery.
Okay.
Because that's a lot of strain on the body.
Yeah.
It's also
For sure.
travel too.
Right.
And so you got to factor all those things in. And so the biggest things like some tools that I'll use is like dry needling or
Mhm.
soft tissue kind of instrument assisted. People can call it like scraping or Graston or whatever you want to call it. And, you could do cupping or whatever, but then integrating that with a exercise program that is actually going to help him improve his mobility
Mhm.
and also get his nervous system ready
Mhm.
to do the demands that he needs from it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the nuance. There's a lot more in the weeds details that I could kind of go into, such as palm cooling and kind of offsetting heat, because whenever you have a lot of heat kind of build up in the system, the nervous system does not like to work as well
No, when you're too hot.
when you're too hot. If you
Yeah.
guys are familiar with any kind of sauna based things, the nerves don't do well with heat.
Right.
And so when you're talking about, like, people like to do cold plunges. I've
Yeah.
talked to Drew about this. He is not very keen to trying this quite yet, but maybe soon. But something as simple as palm cooling, or even putting your feet into maybe some buckets of ice, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be for very long, but this would be something I would be very interested in kind of testing with him,
Right.
because of the effects that it could likely have on power output.
Ah.
It's well kind of established in the sense that it can help in the weight room
I've
help
heard
with your
that,
power
yeah.
output
Okay.
and your strength output in the
Yeah.
weight room. And so that's palm cooling. But then you can get into the recovery means of like, how can we get to the next level? Right.
Mhm.
But it's a fun process, kind of giving him a lot of different things to work on, but he's got a lot on his plate, and
Right.
that's what you do with a long drive guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and to talk about a lot on your plate, running
We're
this
going
business,
we're going
running
in.
this business, we have a lot on our plate. So we do have to throw in some sponsored ads. Currently, we're working with 30 Off Local, which is a pretty amazing group. You can go on their website, set up an account, and you can purchase certificates that are full price, and you just pay 30% off. It's a great way to save a little bit of money, especially like fine dining for those who drink like we do, or at least like I do.
Especially when we're doing 4 or 5 podcasts in a day.
Yes. They do set up with VitaFlow, IV Clinic, Clean Juice, the Native Salt Clinic, Native
Cave.
Salt Cave.
Yeah. Piranha Salt Cave, which is my favorite one to go to.
I've still not been to that one. And they
check it
also work with people local to us in the Cargo District, like Mess Hall, Cheese Smith, and Fermental. Like I said, it sets you up to save some money, but also support local. So you get that double benefit, get a full price, like $25 gift card, and you only got to pay 70% of it.
We're also on there too.
I was just about
Yeah,
to
we're
shout
on
that
there
out.
too.
I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I did see Change the Game on there.
Yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, make sure you go check them out as well.
So for those who want to up their game in golf or in life, check out Change the Game through the 30 Off Local website.
Yeah.
That is right.
That was an even better segue than expected.
See, Tyler always doubts me.
I don't doubt you at all.
Not bad. Not bad.
I am the John Stockton of our podcast. I'm here to set him up for the perfect assist to lead into a sponsored ad or to just transition to something new. Similar to like you were talking about palm cooling. What does that do? I'm assuming my thought process was like if your palms are colder, you can actually feel your grip on things, and so you're not exerting things differently.
So the mechanisms behind that, or the physiology
Mhm.
behind that, a lot of it has to do with offsetting heat.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's what a lot of it has to do with, is offsetting the heat. And then basically, as a byproduct of that, you're not really targeting muscles necessarily, right? You're more so the palms are a great place for that. It also increases adrenaline,
Okay.
right? That if you've ever taken a cold shower,
Yeah.
or a cold plunge,
Avoid
and you
it.
have that, you avoid like the plague. I'll go do that myself over at Cryo Cove if you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah.
Bo over there. Take a cold plunge, and the first few seconds that you're in there, like
Mhm.
it just takes your breath away, right? Like
Yeah.
you're trying to get your breath under control, but it's kind of that shock, right? And so it's not so much, you're not trying to do it for a long period of time.
Mhm.
But so there's that offset of heat, but also the adrenaline that it's going to kind of release and kind of happen into the system, right?
Okay.
Okay.
And so you kind of combine those two, then you're looking at nerves that want to function better, right? Or more optimally,
Right.
not under a lot of heat stress, which heat causes you to obviously fatigue a lot quicker. And so this is something even possibly applicable to people who run during the
Right.
summer or who are weightlifting in the heat, right? Offsetting that heat is going to be a big factor to not fatiguing as quickly.
Mm.
And so
Okay.
that's a big element of why I would kind of recommend doing it. Now, as far as like safety with it, be careful with cold,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I'm not, if you've never tried it before, be careful with it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be ice, right? Just colder water, kind of offset that heat. And frankly, if you kind of, it has a lot to do with that fatigue.
Yeah.
If you've ever worked out in the CrossFit box, right, or
Yeah.
gym, in the middle of summer,
Mhm.
I was just at a CrossFit competition yesterday over at
Oh, yeah.
Seacoast, right?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of different gyms that were there. I've been working with a few clients that were also competing in that competition. But it was hot.
Yeah.
It was really hot. And so I was actually telling this to a few people there. They had ice buckets outside, and I'm like, they're like sticking their whole leg in there and because of their knee. And I'm like, yeah, there's probably a better way to kind of fix your knee. But, the added benefit, I'm like, hey, do this with your hands, it might help with your strength output, get back in there kind of thing, and kind of help you not feel as fatigued from the heat. Some guys looked at me and are like, okay. And they did it, and I don't know what came of it, but just fun little tips that people look at you like you're crazy.
Right. Yeah. So does that work like that instantly? Like if you're like in between sets and you go in and do something like that for a few minutes?
So that's where you got to test it yourself.
Okay.
That's where everyone's going to be a little bit different, right? Okay. With how they're going to respond, how well trained they are at whatever lift or task that they're trying to do. So there's going to be kind of a specific response from that. Okay. But if you look at it chronically over time, if you do it kind of in a regimented fashion, it's going to increase your strength and power. With nothing else, with all things equal. Yeah, it's going to improve your strength and power, which is kind of a fascinating thing in the weight room. Yeah. But I'm looking forward to maybe trying to test that with Drew to see about his clip speed. And also how quickly he fatigues in these hotter events. Because that's a big thing. Like whenever you're competing, or even if you're just the average golfer going out and playing golf during the summer, or you have some kind of tournament or some kind of member guest, and you're like really trying to perform at the top level, you might be drinking if you're doing member guest. But
typically.
Yeah. And so, but you're still trying to play good, right? So, something as simple maybe as like a really cold rag or something, like who knows, like how that could affect and kind of help just that little extra piece of performance. But that's kind of getting into different realms of kind of, I guess you could call them hacks of trying to improve performance. But there's a lot of other ways to improve performance besides those things if you haven't done those things yet.
Okay.
Not to have like Drew be the center of the podcast here, but I think he does like a good job of being like the extreme, right? So like kind of talking about that. So is there a way that you train him differently or work on him differently in a place like Memphis, Tennessee versus like I know he has one either coming up or he just did one in like Vegas, outside of Vegas.
Right. He had that back in I think March or April.
Right.
Yeah.
April.
Yeah. And so a lot of it, so it comes down to the prep work, right? How many balls does it take for you to reach your peak speed?
Okay.
Right. So a lot of long drive guys, it's going to take them 50, 60 balls.
Really?
Before they start peaking.
Oh, wow.
If you're talking about a guy, I'm blanking on his name. He's, I shouldn't, but gosh.
On the spot, I get it.
I know.
All the time.
Oh, what's his name? I should know it, but he was a really, really great world long driver throughout the 90s and I believe early 2000s. 4 or 5 world championship titles.
Wow.
I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but he doesn't start peaking with his speed until like he's still ramping up 200 swings in.
Oh my God.
He is still ramping up. He has still not met the peak. And so I don't envy that.
No.
For that to take that long. But you got to know your number.
Yeah.
It's like a pitcher. They got to know their number before they're warm and ready to go into the game.
Yeah.
And so that's a key piece to your performance on that level. Obviously, there's a lot of mental prep. You got to get grid time.
Yeah.
But physically speaking, you don't want to do. This is a kind of a subject matter that is tough for a lot of people to hear. You do not want to stretch statically before any of that kind of thing, any of those kinds of sports. Golfing, don't stretch before you play.
Or dynamic stretch is going to be better for that? Or
dynamic stretching is going to be better. Yes, very much so. Static stretching is kind of what I'm talking about, right? Where you're holding a stretch, like my hamstrings are really tight. I gotta make that feel better. Static stretching is going to reduce your power output 15, 20%.
Wow.
And it's also going to put you at a higher risk for injury, a much higher risk, because what you're doing is you're dampening pain signals.
Okay.
You're decreasing pain signals so you can move further, but those pain signals are there for a reason,
Right.
because your body isn't going to, respond well necessarily to that extra range of motion that you haven't trained. Right. And so what's funny though, is that a lot of guys that I've worked with, yeah, man, I would stretch before I play, but I'd have a hard time finding my swing until about 8 or 9 holes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, you're dealing with the range of motion that you weren't used to.
Huh.
And so, if you're struggling to find your swing and you're stretching before you play, that's the first place to kind of maybe look at, like, well, why is it different than it should be? Like when I was on the range, like I spent a little bit more time stretching or what have you. But power performance, injury risk, a better way would be to activate. Obviously, activate muscles. I love using bands.
Right.
Very versatile, very easy to transport, and very easy to use. And so using bands to warm yourself up dynamically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of guys that will come back and tell me, like, Grant, I didn't even need to practice on the range. I felt so warmed up, like I took like 3 swings and I'm like, I'm ready to go.
Oh, wow.
And whereas it took them 50, 60, 70 balls before they felt like they were loose.
Yeah.
And so it's very practical. It saves you time, but it also saves you that mechanical load
Right.
of all of the swings. But yeah, so not stretching statically until afterwards. Afterwards is a good time to kind of work on that soft tissue work, that recovery work. But a lot of, I like to use something like overcoming isometrics.
Mm-hmm.
It could be called overcoming elastics. Take a really, really thick band
Yeah.
and attach it to something that isn't going to break, right? Or isn't valuable. And so you could do it in many different ways: rows, or pulling, pushing, attaching it to your foot and your leg to kind of work the legs as well, core, where you're trying to overcome that band, that resistance, with as much force as you can. And once you can't overcome it anymore, keep pushing through. And do that for not very long. Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
But 4, 5, 6 seconds, really, really trying to recruit as many muscle fibers, as many motor units as you can to prime the nervous system. And the great thing about it is it doesn't leave you sore. It actually will leave you kind of like, really amped up. Everything's firing on all cylinders. And it's a really, really good way to prepare yourself physically and through the nervous system for something that is going to be very, very ballistic and very, very explosive.
Yeah.
And so overcoming isometrics is a great tool. And then you get into more of kind of the ballistic speed work that you could kind of integrate as well.
Right.
And, that takes different kind of, it looks differently depending on where the person has their best power centers.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple different power centers of the golf swing that we'll measure, and we'll find, like, if you influence these more, like if you improve your base in these power centers, it's going to make your speed go up.
Okay.
And so that's also a part of the home assessment. The different power centers, there's 3 of them, but 2 of them are actually causative to increases in your club speed. And so that'll affect the training. That'll affect kind of how you're going to program and periodize a training program for somebody, but also tailored to where their weak points are.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So knowing the athlete, because we're all athletes.
Right.
It's just, we're all athletes in different ways and in different sports or activities. But for the specific sport, you got to find where this person has their weak links and where they're actually really strong at. And we can kind of get into how that's going to affect their golf swing, because, well, if you guys want to get into that, but if you don't use their strong points,
Yeah.
You're going to have a golfer that's going to be very inefficient.
Right.
So they'll be able to hit it, but they're not going to be dialed in.
So there's getting into physics here just a little. Kinetics and kinematics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So your kinetics, meaning ground force,
Right.
is going to directly impact or dictate the kinematics, which are the 3D kind of motion, kinetics 2D, kinematics 3D.
Oh, okay.
So your kinetics, your ground interaction, how well you're actually pushing against the ground, is going to dictate if your hips move first, if your spine moves next, if your shoulders move next, and then kind of the last link being the club, right? And so if somebody, their power center, if they're not, I'll just give you one, the vertical power center, if they're not really efficient with or very strong in their vertical power center, they're not going to be swinging the club very fast unless they have a really, really strong other power center, but that's going to likely lead to injury risk.
Right.
Okay.
So if somebody's very upper body dominant, right? This is also another power center, push power, right? If you're really, really dominant in that power center, which does increase club speed, if you're very arms dominant, and you might see this in your own golf swing, whenever the arms get too involved, there's a very hard time knowing where that ball is going to go.
Yep.
Even though you might be swinging really, really fast.
That's every time.
Right?
Yep.
Right? But so understanding like where some of these power centers are, as far as where their strong points are, where their weak points are, and knowing how to make them a more balanced golfer with those power centers will greatly help how well they swing without any swing instruction. And so that's something that I work on with a lot of golfers as well, is kind of the swing efficiency and the sense of how your body moves. I don't teach you how to swing the golf club in the sense of like, how to play this and to play that, how to make this kind of shot. Definitely not a short game. I can't help you there. I wish I could, but I can give you some names if you need some names for guys to help you with that. But when it comes to how well somebody moves, that's going to be the bread and butter of how reproducible your swing is. I'll give you guys a term here. Grandiose.
Right.
Grandiose. It's a big acronym for what's about to follow. So you want to have ground force, good ground interaction. That's the G, right? And then you want to have a rhythmic swing. And so ground force, rhythmic, A being asynchronous. You want to have the lower body moving separately from the upper body. You want your hips moving apart from your spine. It's a term called separation or disassociation. And so you want to have it ground force, right? You want to have a rhythmic swing, asynchronous. You want to have it to be natural. You don't want it to be forced, right? Yeah. And then you want it to be dynamic. I kind of like to kind of coin or term, like we want to be momentum dynamic golfers in our swing. It's just going to look different for each shot. A wedge shot is going to look very different from a driver.
Right.
Yes. Right. Obviously it should. If it doesn't, you're probably looking at Bryson DeChambeau.
It's true.
That guy is, when you're hitting 8-iron 220, it's like, oh, that's a little far there. I'm not talking about you, Drew, but he can do that himself too. That, so you want to have it dynamic, and then you want to be impulse smart with how you're using the impulses in your golf swing. And by impulse, I mean basically, are you having forces timed at the right times? Right? If they're timed at the wrong times, you're going to be more susceptible for injury. But you're also, we got some thunder in the background there. Oh, that was a loud one.
It's very loud.
We got these headphones on, and that was loud too. But so the want to be impulse smart. You're going to be at a higher injury risk if you're applying the force wrongly. So this is where, when people look up on YouTube, like, how do I do this? How do I have better ground force? And this is a discussion I've had with many golf professionals around town as well. Guys from Loggerhead, guys, Kirk, a lot of different people around town, Drew himself. And there's a lot of different thoughts as to how to make somebody more kind of efficient from the ground. But I find when it comes to like hip injuries and back injuries, if you have somebody focus on certain elements of the ground interaction, they might be more susceptible to hip injuries and low back injuries as a result, even though it might make their ground force look better per se.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about, you know, the way it looks as much as how you did it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can get this really good pattern that looks really good, but how did you get there? How did you use the ground? And there's certain drills that I'll do with people to try to make them, to keep it simple, because I like to keep it simple, even though it might not sound like that right now. I do like to keep it simple. And 2 simple drills for golfers are a shift and turn drill, also known as the Shern drill, kind of coined by Dr. Kwan.
Okay.
And if anybody's interested, he does have a YouTube channel and an Instagram page that a lot of good stuff on there.
That's how I've heard about him.
Yeah.
On Instagram.
Yeah. He has a lot of cool drills, but unless you know what's really going on, be careful trying them, right?
Right. Yeah.
As with anything. But so the shift and turn drill, continuous swings, basically getting you to be dynamic, right? Impulse smart. And then very orchestrated with it too. And then you want it to be safe and then efficient.
Yeah.
And so that's the grandiose, the acronym there. Again, Dr. Kwan there. But so with all of those things in mind, like those are going to be big things for somebody to have a really good golf swing, a really good ground interactive golf swing that is going to be something that, you know, is going to be reproducible, but also keep them injury free. Because that's really what a lot of golfers are after, is how can they be injury free and play as much golf as they want.
Yep.
Right.
That makes sense. So that leads me to my question for you. As a person who works with a bunch of golf professionals and who works in a business where you're helping people all the time, what does success look like for you?
What does success look like? So are we talking about the business? Are we talking about life? Are we?
All
you
of the above.
choose.
Oh man.
I asked the question.
All right.
You give me an answer.
Well,
I'm not going to put you in a hole or in a corner.
yeah. So there's many different ways I could kind of answer that question. But the one that is the most meaningful and purposeful to me is living out my Christian faith.
Okay.
Yeah.
That for me is the most important thing. You know, sharing about Jesus to people and kind of representing him in the way I interact with people in the day-to-day basis. You know, being able to have compassion on people, being able to encourage, to love people, to kind of see them where they're struggling. Because, you know, I deal with a lot of people that are in pain. You know, I deal with people that also have things like multiple sclerosis and all kind of other diagnoses, right? And so when you deal with people that are in pain, like, you know, what drives me, what keeps me going is knowing where my foundation is. And, you know, that for me, that's in Jesus Christ. And that's just a big part of who I am. And the way that I live and the way that I conduct business, in my marriage. And so success to me would be to try my best to honor him in what I do. And then in the business side of things, gosh, like where do I want to see the business go and be successful? Man, I would love to, it would be really awesome to have multiple people working with me doing the golf side of things, right? Golf, physical therapy, golf performance, having fitness classes that are just changing people's lives. No pun intended, you know, game changing, right? That's the tagline that we have. It's great. The business name helps that. Very corny, but that's okay.
It works.
It does
People
work.
remember corny.
Game changers.
Yes.
So I would love to see as many people as I can impacted by what we do for the better. You know, feeling great. It does something to you when you hear somebody say, man, I've been having pain for 10 years and you were the first person to really be able to help me.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And like that pain was just agonizing to have to deal with. No doctor was able to really help me. No shot, no surgery was able to help me, but you were able to. And I've also had people that have, you know, been dealing with chronic pain, right? and being able to talk them through that, being able to talk through the mental, psychological struggle, even though, maybe my role necessarily isn't in that realm of mental health, you do kind of take on certain kind of things with that, with people that are in pain.
Oh, for sure.
It's just knowing obviously what your scope is and what your boundaries are, but you can really be a profound impact on people in those ways. But the big things with golf, if I can help as many people as I can to, add 10, 15, 20, 30 yards to their game, have them play the game as long as they want to play it,
right?
Have that longevity into their 80s and not hurt, play a couple times a week, shoot their age, right. Unless you're like 85, you want to shoot 75, right?
Right.
But if you're 59, I'm sorry, that's going to be really hard. Or younger, right?
Pretty hard, yeah.
I was going to be like, anything under 59 seems kind of hard, but
it's like, imagine that 30-year-old kid listening right now.
Right? It's like, I want to shoot my age for 9.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not me. That's a little young on that end. 27. Oof,
right.
I don't want my handicap to be my age. How about that?
Are we talking 30, 35 or
either? Well, yeah, I turned 35 this year. Yeah.
Well, there you go. 35. Right. I mean, hey, you can get down to 15. You can get half of that, 17 and a half. Am I doing math right?
Yes.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Math on the fly.
I'm just here for it.
I want to ask you one question, then into my last question. But my next question for you would be anyone listening. So I'm thinking about my senior advisor at work, financial advisor. He's an avid golfer. So if you could give him 1 or 2 major things to like make sure you focus on this, what would it be?
Well, I would say, if you wanted to, take that home assessment.
Yeah.
Because that'll give you a lot of really good detail and information on like how you move as an individual with your body, right? Yeah. We're talking about rotational mobility. We're talking about what kind of golfer you are, like classifying you as a this golfer, as a this golfer. Are you a ticking time bomb? Are you a well-balanced golfer? Are you these other golfers? How do you compare to people your age in these power metrics, but also your swing speed?
Yeah.
After the age of 40, you start to lose 3 to 5% of your power every year.
Oh, wow.
If you don't do anything about it. For golfers, you start to lose probably, relatively the same with your swing speed if you don't train and if you don't train well. And so the most powerful thing I could tell you is you need to look at these different metrics, see how you stack up against other people your age, and see what you got to do about it. Yeah. Because if you're in pain, just because you might be getting older, just because you're getting older doesn't mean that pain has to be the normal.
Right.
It's common, but it doesn't have to be normal. And so if you're in pain, try to fix that. Find somebody, reach out to us, and fix that the best you can.
Yeah.
So that you can play golf avidly, right? Or as much as you want to compete in tournaments, and Carolina Golf Association tournaments. Yeah. And, if you're looking to add distance, you have got to train. You have got to train because if you don't, you're going to get hurt. Don't look for gadgets. Don't look for a bunch of different things to try to fix this and this about your swing if you haven't addressed your body first. And that's going to also impact your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
The amount of golfers that I've worked with that they tell me like, hey, Grant, this really, really helped me with my golf game. But man, in my day-to-day life, like a lot of grandfathers, like, and like I can pick up my kid or my grandkid and I can, tussle with them on the ground and I can chase after them and keep up with them. And I was dealing with, I couldn't get out of the bed in the morning without just like feeling like, oh, I'm going to fall apart. But that's not the case anymore. The arthritis I had in my back, I don't feel that anymore. I've had that for a decade.
Yeah.
And so, things like that, like what's the most powerful thing I could say? Do something about your body, because if you aren't doing something for it, it's just going to continue to age,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so we're in this constant fights. You could call it father time.
Mhm.
You don't have to let that take the best advantage of you. There's something that you can do about it. And, we can go into, I'd love talking about like things like metabolic health and things, strategies that you can do to improve your health overall and your wellness. But in the terms of golf, that's what I would say.
Right. That's awesome. I appreciate all of that. That's great. And because I know I'm going to go back to work on Monday and be like, oh, hey, I had this guy on the podcast. And he's like, I've been listening to that one. So I was like, I have to throw in a plug for him and make sure that he has some tips in there.
He has a reason to listen.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, you hit on a point that I've loved talking to people like yourself, especially on the podcast this past year, is saying that no matter what your age is, pain is not normal. It may be common, but not normal.
That's right.
And so, I just love that you're just another professional and doctor on the podcast to be like, hey, even though you're feeling this pain, it's not normal. There's something we can do about it.
And the amount of people I've heard too be told, just deal with it, or just kind of, it's just a part of getting older, either from their friends or even from other doctors. Like, it's normal. Like, hey, you got the arthritis and that's just a part of the game. That's just a part of life. It's like, no. Like, now, granted, there are obviously circumstances that you can't control. Like if you got some kind of autoimmune thing or some kind of, thing going on the side that is a major factor in it. But the way that we should feel as we get older, it's going to directly relate to how well we're taking care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it is normal to not be in pain because that's telling you that there isn't danger, there isn't a threat going on. Pain's very complex.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Pain is very, very complex. There's a little story about that. If you care for me to share.
Sure.
There's a gentleman who, he had really, really, really bad low back pain that, no one was able to help. And frankly, you get to the conclusion of like the interaction with them. And, there's just nothing mechanical that you can reproduce. There's nothing that you can do physically. It's like, all right, so this is something unique and different. There are a lot of pain classifications that you can get into in the pain science world.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff going on with this gentleman. And, you tell him, I want you to keep a journal, a pain journal. Seems silly, but it's very practical. What are some events, like when you have that spike of pain, what are some things that, physically that were going on, emotionally, stress related? How much sleep did you get? What preceded that huge bout of pain that you had?
Yeah.
Start trying to connecting the dots, try to find connections, right? Came back. He said, you can't help me. Okay. Tell me more. What did you find through your journaling?
Yeah.
I only have really, really bad low back pain that's persistent and so severe when I'm at my mother-in-law's. Now, it's funny, but at the same time, it's fascinating because he lived next door.
Oh, wow.
What did he do? He moved across town and only had to deal with it to small degrees going back to in-laws.
Right.
And he got along fine with them.
Right.
But it was just more of a matter of kind of the stress response that his body was having. There's nothing wrong with his low back. And it had to do with all these other things of like threats and danger of, these things are going on and the brain interprets it as pain.
Right.
And probably somewhere that he had pain before.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
That's where you're going to be more susceptible to having these experiences. And so pain overall is an experience. So there are caveats when it comes to, pain.
Right.
Is it normal to experience it? You should be able to move well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know you guys are avid, weightlifters or health enthusiasts, right? Aside from the occasional whiskey.
Yeah.
But We got some water here too to help with that, right? But the health that you create for yourself through getting enough sleep, through what you eat, and being well versed and understanding how what you eat affects how you feel. Definitely. And so sleep, eating, nutrition, exercise, getting your VO2 max up. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, we're getting into some weeds there.
Is that right?
But basically improving your metabolic health, resistance training, it's going to help improve your blood pressure, your heart stuff. It's going to improve your glucose regulation, your blood sugar regulation, right? It's going to improve the quality of your bones. You don't get more bone density as you get older, right? You start to have osteoporosis, broken bones, holy bones that can then get broken a lot easier. Yep. But you can change the geometry of your bones through resistance training. Geometry meaning, so if you took so you could have a small stick, right? That's hollow,
right?
Or parodic osteoporosis, very holy, right? And you can snap that thing really easily. Or you could take a big bamboo thing that's just super, super like huge, but very hollow, but the geometry is different, right? Yeah. That's harder to break. Yeah. Right. So you can improve that through resistance training, through strength training. And so doing those things, cardiovascular exercise, strength training, all of these different things are going to help you feel better and feel good. And so it's not normal to experience pain on a day-to-day basis and tightness.
Right.
You're 50, you're 60, and you're tight all the time. Well, what are you doing about it? Mm-hmm. And if what you're doing about it isn't helping, it might be time to look at something else. Because I have a lot of golfers that'll stretch, that have done plenty of stretching, they've done yoga and have done all these different things, and it doesn't help their tightness. A lot of the time, tightness is a reflection of not having enough strength in certain muscle groups. Tight hamstrings. Oh man, my hamstrings are so tight. Well, it's likely because they might be weak if you've been trying stretching and it hasn't been helping that sensation. Because the brain is smart. When there's a lack of stability in a certain segment of the body, it's going to try to create that some way to prevent you from hurting yourself. And so, until you give it adequate strength in that area, there's normal levels of tightness too. But there's what I'm talking about here is just a kind of persistent level of it just feels tight. I just gotta stretch that out.
Yeah.
And the brain is sending that as a protective mechanism. Now, if you ignore that and you stretch and you stretch and you stretch and you continue, what ends up happening for a lot of people is it then turns into pain.
Okay.
And so, well, how do you fix that? Through assessing, obviously. But for a lot of people, you get them out of pain, first of all, through, soft tissue work, through certain exercises, whatever they might need. But you got to stabilize in that scenario. You got to find out what areas aren't working the way that they should and coordinating the way that they should. Yeah. And what happens is that the brain starts getting these safety signals of, all right, we're good. We're stable here. So I can let off of the pain. I can let off of that tightness. And then the person's like, I feel amazing. It doesn't bother me like it used to. And it's like, you did the right things this time. Mm-hmm. You're giving it the right therapeutic things that it needs. And so that's the nuance behind, there's a lot more nuances, but that's a simple kind of introduction into should I continue stretching if it's not working? No, there might be other ways that you can improve how you feel. And so that's where it's important to have somebody kind of take a look at you that's qualified to do so.
Good to know. Well, with that, we have come up on our time for today, and we have one last question for you. Where can we shout you out at?
You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. Instagram is going to be the place that we're going to be more interactive. Right. Facebook, I don't know about you, but it's a tough platform.
Same, yeah.
It is a tough platform. So yeah, mainly Instagram. We're on YouTube. I have a pretty large video database on YouTube if anyone's interested in kind of, educational content on golf and all things golf and their body and find, just some exercises. I want to help as many golfers as we can.
Right.
And, if if you're like, man, I don't have a job, I don't have anything that I can do, to go to that. That's free. And then if you want to work with me and, work on something specific, then hey, we can go that route too.
Right.
But Instagram, YouTube, our website, changethegamept.com. We're located off of 4th Street downtown in the Brooklyn Arts District.
Oh,
so we're not that far away, guys. We're very close.
Right down the road.
Just right down the road. And really good location. We just recently expanded from 1,200 square feet to, about 5,600 square feet.
It's huge.
We got a performance facility now. We got a golf bay. We got all the fun kind of gadgets, and it's a lot of fun. We got a bunch of strength classes, fitness classes for golf, for runners, for weightlifters, some advanced weightlifting classes for people wanting to really get to the next level. And on top of that, we you said that right there.
Right, you're good.
On top of that, if you guys, if you want to schedule an appointment, or just kind of see more about who we are, we do offer, like currently during the summer, we're offering some free evaluations, right? So for golf or for running or for weightlifters, a free 30-minute consult to kind of figure out like, hey, who, as you specifically, like, what are you looking to achieve?
Yeah.
Like I'd pose the same question to these people, right? What is success to you? What are you looking to achieve? What are you wanting to, to change about yourself? Like, as a golfer, these are the things that you're looking for. As a runner, you're looking for these things. As a weightlifter, you're looking for these things. And so, we do offer that in case anybody on the show is wanting to take advantage of that. Just give us a call and, just say that you listen to the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast. Nice. And, we'll give that to you and get you started on a path that gets you to where your success is.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I love it. Just so all those who aren't tech savvy want to know, all this information will be in the show notes as well as in our post. So when we post about this episode, we'll plug in all your info so people can follow you guys on social media, as well as find the quickest and easiest way to get to your website and learn a little bit more for those avid golfers, as well as those who don't want to wake up and have to pop some ibuprofen every morning.
That's right. It's not just, I just want to clarify too, it's not just, I do work with some professional guys, right?
Yeah.
I work with a bunch of older gentlemen and women and everyone in between. The youngest that I have right now is 11.
I saw some stuff on like Instagram that you're working with some like younger guys that like really starting to get them like to their peak performance. That's
right.
Really cool.
That's right. So it doesn't matter like what caliber you are, nor how good of a golfer you are.
Okay.
It doesn't matter like if you're a really good golfer, if you're just getting brand spanking new to the sport and you're just like, I got the golf bug. I want to have fun, but I don't want to hurt.
Yeah. Right.
So, and get the fitness side of it too.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something that is fitness related, that is also going to help your golf game. There's that too.
He's the guy. He's here to change the game.